Welcome to episode 5 of Diamonds in the Rough, the show where we listen to video game music from past to present and discover some hidden gems along the way. Multimedia is a sum of its parts. Some say the split between audio and visual is 50-50. Certainly, without the soundtrack or the sound design, some smash hits would feel very different. In today's episode, we're listening to music from inns, towns, and taverns. We'll hear some tracks that have been forgotten, and some that made games the icons that they are today. Diablo was released by Blizzard North in 1996. It's a role-playing game that sees you face off against the minions of the Lord of Terror, and eventually do battle with Diablo himself in the depths of hell. The game stood out for its story, ambience, and of course music. The town of Tristram is where the story begins. That was the track Tristram from 1996's Diablo. Matt Uellerman composed the music for Diablo as well as Diablo II. While not particularly prolific, his name has been cemented in gaming history for those two works, and Tristram is the iconic track. By the time Diablo III was released in 2012, Blizzard had a regular roster of composers, including Russell Brower, Derek Duke, and Glenn Stafford, who, along with a number of others, are responsible for Blizzard's oral signature. The Tristram theme is given a reprise in Diablo III, with the track simply titled New Tristram. fresh take on an iconic track that remains faithful to the original. Some of the supporting music and the overture for Diablo III was performed by the Eminence Symphony Orchestra, which is an Australian group based in Sydney. While they don't tour too much these days, if you ever get a chance to see them live, I can highly recommend the experience. Staying in the realms of Blizzard's high fantasy universe, we're going to turn our attention now to the ubiquitous World of Warcraft. Taverns are a welcome sight in World of Warcraft, whether you're returning from an epic quest or just trying to avoid someone who's 50 levels above you. David Arkenstone is another composer on Blizzard's roster that I hadn't mentioned before, but he plays a significant role in a lot of the music in this franchise. We'll listen to a track called Thunderbrew, followed by Gallows End. We'll shift from high fantasy to pirates now with some music from the recently released Sea of Thieves. The game took quite some time coming to market and it's had mixed reviews. While the gameplay may be lacking, the piratey ambience is very well done. It's a high seas adventure game developed by Rare. Rare is, of course, a highly regarded studio responsible for smash hits like Battletoads, Donkey Kong Country 1, 2 and 3, Killer Instinct, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie and Perfect Dark. We've heard a few tracks composed by Robin Beanland on this show before. He's been with Rare for many years, and the music for Sea of Thieves is his latest entry. We'll hear Summon the Megalodon, followed by Maiden Voyage, 2 tracks perfect for a pirate tavern setting. music from Sea of Thieves, a cross-platform multiplayer on both PC and Xbox. The last track especially, and quite obviously, echoes Hans Zimmer's Pirates of the Caribbean score. But that score does itself actually echo genuine sea shanties and fishermen's songs sung in the Gallic tradition. It goes without saying that if we're listening to pirate tavern music, we need to hear something from the Monkey Island series. Clever story, clever characters, clever puzzles, and clever music combine to form one of the most cherished game series ever. Michael Land composed the music for all of them, starting in 1990 with The Secret of Monkey Island. He and the developers created a system called iMuse, Interactive Music Streaming Engine, which allowed for a dynamic presentation of the music for each setting. Your actions, the characters present, and the point of the story you were at changed how the music played. It also meant that the music seamlessly transitioned from scene to scene. This was very different to the video games that came before, where themes and cues played on a loop and didn't transition into each other in a cinematic way. The pirate town of Woodtick is a good example of how this works. In the following track, you'll hear the main theme and hear it change as Guybrush, a mighty pirate, moves between different locations within the town. The music from the pirate town of Woodtick from Monkey Island 2: LeChuck's Revenge, released in 1991. While we're in the Tri-Island area, it's only right that we pay a stop at the Scumm bar. It's a place of pilgrimage for sailors and especially those wishing to become a mighty pirate. This track is from the 2009 special edition, which saw revamped graphics and remastered music. a LucasArts classic. Grim Fandango was released in 1998, and it was also developed and published by LucasArts. The content was much more mature, and the story centered around a very morbid sense of humour. Peter McConnell and the usual suspects put together a soundtrack that's described appropriately as big band, bebop, and bones. Here are 2 short tracks from the Blue Casket Club. The Blue Casket exterior and inside the Blue Casket from the hilarious Grim Fandango. It's been said that at least 1 in every 3 households in South Korea owns a copy of StarCraft. This smash hit was in many ways Blizzard's follow-up to Warcraft, but set in an entirely different universe. StarCraft II followed 2 years after the original title. In 2010, Wings of Liberty took what fans loved and expanded upon it. There are 2 soundtracks for this game. One is the cinematic music in the game proper, and the secondly actually comes from a jukebox within Joey Ray's bar. The bar essentially functions as a menu and a way for the developers to provide backstory for the main characters in the game. Music from the jukebox includes several covers of real songs as well as some original tracks. These original tracks were put together by a group of Blizzard employees who had formed a band in their spare time. Here are the tracks Most Wanted and Blood and Glory by the StarCraft Terran Band. The StarCraft Terran band there with 2 tracks from StarCraft II, Wings of Liberty, and you can actually buy that music on vinyl if you really want. We'll return to a fantasy theme now, but stay in the late 90s. Medieval was released in 1998 on the PlayStation 1 and it was produced by SCE Cambridge Studios. It's a game that also relies heavily on morbid humour, and the music was composed by Andrew Barnabas and Paul Arnold, better known as Bob and Barn. The visuals of the game call heavily on Tim Burton's style of art, and the music, as you would expect, calls heavily on the style of Danny Elfman. Here's one track from Medieval called The Enchanted Earth, The Sleeping Village. Creepy. Medieval is due for a reboot in 2019 as well, which just goes to show the following is still strong. Final Fantasy. It's hard to know where to begin. If you want to start at the very beginning, you'll have to go through 15 titles, all the way back to 1987. If you include all of the remakes and spin-offs, the number is too many to count. Nobuo Uematsu is synonymous with the series, and he's said that his score for the 9th installment is his favourite. The frontier village of Dali has a peaceful feel to it, with music to match. music from Final Fantasy IX, which was released in 2010. Despite the Western arrangement, there's always something decidedly Japanese about how they put this music together. Sticking with Japanese composers, we'll listen to a track now from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. This was released on the Wii in 2011, and one of the taverns in the game is called the Lumpy Pumpkin. The music was composed by Hijami Wakai and Mahito Yokita. For the last few tracks on today's episode, we'll return to the more traditional tavern sound. Jeremy Soule's music for Skyrim is well known, and for good reason. The bannered Mare offers a warm refuge for the weary adventurer. one of the many great tracks from The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Divinity Original Sin 2 is also a fantasy role-playing game. It was released in 2017 on Windows and 2018 on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Borislav Slavov composed the music, and we're going to hear the track called Amber Ale. Once again, we're almost out of time. You've been listening to Diamonds in the Rough, the show where we'll listen to video game music from past to present and discover some hidden gems along the way. We'll hear just one more track now, this time from Assassin's Creed III. The music's composed by Lorne Balfe, and the song is called Beer and Friends. Since we're already in town, we won't have to stumble far to the inn once this song's over. Thanks for listening, and join me again soon for another episode of Diamonds in the Rough.